So here we are in the brand new Aston Martin DBX707, which is basically in the ballpark of 700 horsepower, sir. Now, I've been really fortunate that Aston have kindly lent me this car for the best part of a week. Usually, and why I'm setting the context of this time frame, usually when you go on a new car launch or a brand lends you a car, it's for the day. And that's cool, but they also typically put you on the best driving roads they can find and sort of curate the most perfect driving environment, which kind of gives you a skewed impression of a sort of delusional experience of what the reality of experiencing that car is like, because you're on some alpine pass in the middle of summer and they've closed the road for you. Not so with this. I have lived with this really and truly as part of my daily life in areas like Coventry, which, no disrespect to Coventry at all, but it's not your average car launch driving route, okay? This is just living with it, seeing what it's like, petrol stations, in and out of various places of work, to and from meetings, driving it down country roads, highways, etc. Now, I'm going to address this strange thing up front and preface it before I say what I'm about to say, because I've seen comments over the months and years that because I do such a lot with Aston Martin, there is this assumption by a few that I'm actually paid by Aston Martin. Let me just give you a reality check here. I wish I was. But the truth of it is, we just do lots of video content with them and activations because A, they're a British car brand, and B, they make great cars. But most of all, we've developed a great relationship with the team at Aston. And so we end up doing some cool things. The reason I'm prefacing that is, one, to read that as a comment is a little bit concerning, that there's an impression that me or other people who are sharing automotive experiences might be paid for their opinion. Absolutely not. But the main reason I'm saying that is, wait for it, I think this is the best SUV in the world. Period. Now, the reason I say that is there's going to be, oh, what about the Lamborghini Urus and the speed and all this sort of stuff? Well, this is up there with, regardless of what speeds have been out there. At one point, this was the fastest SUV in the world. I know people keep bringing out micro, nuanced upgrades to various different scenarios of speed. Take all of that away, it's the top 3, top 5 fastest SUVs in existence. I mean, how fast do you want to go? It's absolutely rapid. The important thing here is that this is not a platform sharing car. If you look at the Lamborghini Urus, for all that Lamborghini have done to do an exceptional job of set dressing that car, it's still an Audi RS Q8. Nothing wrong with that. It makes sense to put a load of development into one platform and have that work as one great version of something, rather than diluting the R&D across a few cars. But you still get in it and you see Audi-ness throughout it. The Bentley Bentayga, aesthetically, I know this is a personal thing, but I'm not sure it ever sort of pulled the heartstrings when it comes to aesthetics. That is also part of the MLB platform, which is shared between the likes of Lamborghini, Audi, Bentley, Volkswagen. So your sort of Touareg that's built on that platform. They all do a great job of sort of creating a distinct brand experience, but ultimately when it comes down to it, it is still a familiar platform, because when you're stepping into the actual foundation of those cars, it's the same thing. This is totally proprietary Aston Martin. They don't have a chassis sharing platform. Yes, the engine is an AMG, and as a result, it pulls like a mule. It is unbelievable how much torque, performance, and go this thing has. The chassis composure is ridiculous. It's actually like a Vantage on stilts. Like, the ride height and center of gravity should not allow for what this thing will do down a country road. It is ballistic. Like, in the wet, you'd probably be keeping up with the GT3 in this thing. It's nuts. But then there's now, and this is the really important thing, the proprietary infotainment down here. So historically, where DBX fell short was the infotainment, the software. It was Mercedes parts component sharing, and they were beholden to them, and they only gave them the old stuff. So you'd get in, and there was that old sort of C-class infotainment integration, and it was just bad, and it didn't meet with the brand, it didn't meet with the price, and it really let the side down. Not so. We are in a totally different world of brand experience, user experience, and all-round integration with this latest update of this cascading touchscreen, finally, infotainment system. And I know it shouldn't have been like that, but the reality was, it is. Now it's not. To be in it as well, I actually back-to-backed it with a new Range Rover. Surprisingly, when you put this thing out of Sports Plus mode, which I'm in right now, put it into GT mode, the ride quality from an NVH point of view, squeaks, rattles, general road noise, mechanical sound, this is as refined as the latest Range Rover. You can also independently control your driver mode from your suspension. So if you dial it up here to Sports Plus, exhaust sounds cool, but I can take it out of stiff suspension mode, still have a faster calibrated gearbox setting. Just listen to the upshifts in this, right? We're in 3rd gear now. Listen to the upshifts. On the up, that's twin clutch fast. It is rapid, and they also have this sort of simulated, I guess, fuel cut effect, which gives you that sense of changing gear. That's super cool. But in the rotation of a dial down here, you can put it straight back into GT mode, automatic, and just swan. I'm not aware of a SUV platform that has everything that I've just spoken about in one. The Bentayga is probably as sophisticated from a brand point of view. I think aesthetically it's not quite there. The Lamborghini is as fast, but it's a parts bin accumulation of the Volkswagen Audi group. It goes like hell, but it has a certain tone about it. I mean, a Range Rover Sport is nowhere near this in terms of the luxury experience, the drivetrain experience, and the way that it handles is just exceptional. And ultimately, it's all packaged up in an Aston Martin. Genuinely, I'm not just saying this for effect. I'm trying to think what I don't like about it. Probably the price is quite reflective of what it is. So it starts at just over 200 grand. That's before options. This is a very fancy new paint. I believe the technology of this paint alone has been in development for 2 years. God knows what that costs. I don't know for sure the spec of this car, but I reckon it's about 250 grand, which is full fat for an SUV. The experience that I've had with this over the last few days, it's got class leading headroom, legroom, boot space. So that's greater than a Bentley Bentayga. It certainly hustles faster than a Bentayga. Sounds cool. Small things. On the new infotainment system, when you're plugged into Apple CarPlay, the symbols are very small. It's like someone's pinched the scale of the overall Apple interface down smaller. And when you go to interact and press these buttons, they're really tiny, which isn't great for when you're driving. I need to speak to Aston and see if that's a setting or a software update thing. Speaking of small, and it's weirdly frustrating, it's not something that I'd actually thought about, but the indicator as to what gear you're in is tiny. And I'd like to be able to glance at that and get an impression as to what gear I'm in of equal size as the miles per hour speedo. I would like it to be that size font. It's actually sort of tucked down in the right-hand corner of the right-hand instrument cluster, and it's quite small. When you're driving around it in automatic, not a big deal. When you put it in Sports Plus and you're dabbling up and down on the paddles and you just want to sort of prompt us to remember what gear you were in when it sounded like that and it gave you that torque delivery, and just to give you a feel of where you are in the overall car, it's nice to just have that visual aid as to what gear you're in. You know, going back to being fair in the whole parts sharing and component sharing, yes, it does have an AMG engine, but that isn't visible and it doesn't detract from the brand experience. Whereas when you step into a Urus, you are acutely aware that you're in an Audi. This is not that. You're in an Aston Martin. It's 100% distilled, unique experience from any other SUV. And that, I think, is what I really like. And finally, and it's the finishing touch, the cherry on the cake, the infotainment is bang on. That's where I'm at. The other thing, this intangible feeling you get when you are being received by others on the road. It's like sidewalk feedback, right? So people who are around you when you're driving, do they let you out of junctions? What's their overall sort of social response to the presence of the car in their vicinity, etc.? I've had nothing but thumbs up from this. One of my barometers of interest is oftentimes you'll be on the road in a supercar, and if a superbike comes up alongside you, they're often like thumbs up. I've never had that in an SUV. This thing, I'll pull up at lights, superbikes next to me, they're like thumbs up, winding the window down, want to talk about it. Superbikes going that way, thumbs up. Other drivers on the road letting you out of junctions. Just a sort of nice curbside appeal, as it were. So that's something intangible as well that often doesn't get spoken about. There's one thing which is not Aston Martin's fault. This is the rules and regulations from the authorities that be that apply annoying features onto cars that someone in an office in Europe somewhere who probably doesn't have a driving license thought would be a good idea to mandate onto manufacturers. And what it does is it has this automatic road sign reading functionality that when you go over the speed that it thinks it's reading, it then pings a sound on the dashboard to remind you that you're going over the speed limit. But it doesn't always get that right, and it doesn't always know when you've left that speed limit zone accurately. So sometimes it's pinging at you and you're like, I've just gone from a 30 to a 50 zone, thanks very much, stop pinging at me. It's got lane hold assist as default when you start the car. So these things, doesn't matter how many times you turn them off, when you turn them off, the next time you do an engine cycle, aka turn the car off and on again, all of that by default, by law, not by Aston Martin, by law, has to come on again, and it'll ping speed limit awareness, lane hold assist, which means if you sort of etch towards a white line, I don't mean like kamikaze towards it, I mean etch towards a white line, or it interprets that you're going towards a white line, the steering will automatically straighten the car out for you. It's horrendous. It's a horrendous driving experience. You can turn it all off, but you have to do it manually every time you get in the car because of some rule and regulation EU6 nonsense movement. That will be on every car that is registered in summer this year. Going forwards. At least Aston have made it fairly easy to get into to turn it off, but I am told that they're doing a software update where you're going to be able to turn it off with the press of one button, so it'll do it all for you, which is nice. Other thing, it has a bed of torque like a slab of granite. This thing wafts with such dexterity and depth of power. It's like having a malleable ball of energy underneath your right foot. What that is great for is on long runs, on motorways, this thing would be a cross-continental missile. I remember using the previous generation DBX707 as a tracking car for filming a Valkyrie on Silverstone circuit. And let me tell you something, we got the shots, right? And the Valkyrie, you know, it needs a certain degree of speed to even sort of work, so we couldn't have a slow car. We tracked with this, we're riding over the curb, smashing through it, got all of those shots, and it handled, as I mentioned, like a Vantage on stilts. So if you want to spec one, I've been on the new configurator. Spec options are literally endless on it. Like, you can customize this to the nth degree, which if you're thinking about keeping it for a very long time and you can amortize that depreciation over several years, all cool. Other than that, if you're not too spec fussy, you're probably better hanging on to a low mileage pre-registered car, is what I reckon the sort of sweet spot would be. Other than that, I really want one. Like, I really would like one. And whether I go ahead and spec one or not, I don't know. But there's so many different options now. I'd love it in the Lennox green paint that we developed with Aston Martin. But as I said, depreciation long term, I'd want to keep it for a very long time in order to do that. Or I might just get one that probably rolls out on to the road next year. So either way, I really want to get in one and have it as my daily driver. Super cool. Congratulations, Aston. Class leading product in its sector. Goes like hell, looks super cool, sounds great. Well done.